Since the Industrial Revolution, the ocean has absorbed around 30% of the carbon dioxide released by humans. As a result, ocean acidity has increased by roughly 30%, making it one of the fastest chemical changes in Earth's history. And yet, most people have never heard of it. Think about that for a moment. The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet, produces around half of the oxygen we breathe, and support billions of people through food, jobs, and climate regulations. We often hear about rising temperatures, melting glaciers, and sea level rise. But there is another major consequence of climate change happening beneath the surface. It's largely invisible, it doesn't make headlines very often, and because of that, it's easy to ignore. But for millions of people around the world, it's already changing everyday life. Welcome to our podcast. My name is Bilal, and I'm here today with my group members Uzair, Milana, and Murad. Today, we are going to talk about ocean acidification, what it is, who it is affecting, and what we can actually do about it. This is not just a science conversation. This is a conversation about people, poverty, and survival.
That's right, Bilal. And what I think makes this topic so much more important is that it affects millions of people who've done nothing to cause it. We're talking about fishermen, coastal families, and entire communities whose lives depend on the ocean, and the ocean's just changing right beneath their feet. For many low income communities, the ocean isn't just some beautiful place to visit, it's their supermarket, their workplace, and their main source of income. If fish populations decline or coral reefs disappear, families may lose their livelihoods entirely, almost overnight. And as a bonus, in many developing countries, there are few to none alternative jobs available, meaning environmental change quickly changes from just an environmental thing crazy people talk about to an economic and humanitarian problem. One of the key reasons we chose this topic is because public awareness is surprisingly low. Incredibly low, actually. Most people know about plastic pollution or global warming, but ocean acidification is rarely covered. The media, the everyday conversation is just missing altogether. Before preparing for this podcast, even some of us only had base level or not even that level knowledge of this topic. That made us wonder if we didn't know, we knew this little about it, how many other people were in the same position? Or maybe even worse? To answer this question, we carried out our own survey to find out how aware people really are. We conducted an interview with a relative professional, and the results were somewhat interesting. Some cases were surprising. We'll share those findings later in the episode and discuss what they tell us about the importance of education and public awareness. So, whether you've heard of the term ocean acidification before or you've come across it, but you don't know much about it, we hope by the end of this episode you'll have a better understanding of why it matters and why ignoring it is just not an option anymore. Let's get into it.
Now that we know why this matters, let's take a closer look on the science behind it. Milana and Murad, take it away.
So we have established that ocean acidification is a serious issue. But what exactly is causing our oceans to change in the first place? Let me break it down simply. Every time we burn fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas, we release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The ocean acts like a giant sponge and absorbs a massive amount of that carbon dioxide. When carbon dioxide dissolves in seawater, it forms carbonic acid. That acid then breaks down into hydrogen ions, and those hydrogen ions are what makes the water more acidic. Since the Industrial Revolution, ocean pH has dropped from 8.2 to about 8.1, and while that sounds small, on the pH scale that represents a 26% increase in acidity.
And the impact on marine life is devastation. The organisms that suffer the most are ones that build shells or skeletons from calcium carbonate, things like oysters, clams, mussels, sea urchins, and coral reefs. As the ocean becomes more acidic, that calcium carbonate literally dissolves. Shells become thinner, weaker, and harder to form. Coral reefs, which support about 25% of all marine species, are bleaching and dying at an alarming rate. And here And here's the chain reaction when coral reefs collapse, the fish that depend on them for food and shelter disappear. When shellfish populations decline, the entire food web is disrupted. Fewer fish means less food and less income for the people who depend on the ocean every single day.
According to Extreme 2015, published in Nature Climate Change, shellfish industries are already seeing direct economic losses linked to ocean acidification. This is not a future problem, it is happening right now. So far, we have discussed what happens underwater, but the effects don't stay in the ocean. They eventually impact people, especially communities that depend heavily on marine resources.
When we think about environmental issues, we often focus on ecosystems and species. But what's important here is that environmental damage very quickly becomes a social and economic issue, and it hits the most vulnerable people the hardest. Let me tell you about Mekan. Mekan is a 60-year-old fisherman. His father was a fisherman, his grandfather was a fisherman. The ocean is not just his job, it's his entire identity, his family's food source, and their only income. He wakes up before sunrise, takes his old wooden boat into the ocean, and comes back with almost nothing. He cannot afford new equipment, his nets are torn, his catches are half of what they used to be 10 years ago. He sits on the beach sometimes and wonders how his family will survive if things keep getting worse. Makan is fictional, but his story represents millions of people across Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Pacific Islands who are living this exact reality right now.
Yeah, thank you, Bilal. I think this is one of the saddest parts of ocean acidification. It is not only about nature, it is about real people and real families. Imagine waking up every morning, going to work, and not knowing if you will earn enough money to feed your children. For many fishermen, this is becoming normal. Every year it gets harder to catch fish because the ocean is changing. This also affects children in many coastal communities. Families cannot afford healthy food anymore. Fish is often their main source of protein. If there are fewer fish, children may not get the nutrition they need to grow and stay healthy. Another problem is education when parents earn less money. They may not be able to pay for school. Some children even have to leave school to help their families earn money. This means the cycle of poverty continues. Small local businesses also suffer. Seafood markets, restaurants, and fish processing factories have fewer products to sell. As a result, more people lost their jobs and whole communities become weaker. The hardest part is that these people did very little to cause climate change. Most of them have small homes, simple lifestyles, and produce very little pollution. Yet they are paying the highest price. This shows us that ocean acidification is not only a scientific issue, it is also about fairness and responsibility. If we want to protect the ocean, we are also protecting people with jobs, families, and future. That is why governments, companies, and all of us need to take action now, because protection the ocean means protecting millions of lives around the world.
Yes, exactly. Ocean acidification is not just an environmental crisis, it's a poverty crisis, it's a food security crisis, and it's an inequality crisis, one that world is largely ignoring. To help us better understand ocean acidification and why it matters, we are joined by a guest with expertise on this topic. Please welcome John Doe. Good afternoon, John. How you been doing?
I'm great, thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm great too. Forgive my excitement. I've been waiting eagerly for this segment to come around.
Trust me, the feeling's very mutual.
That's great to hear. And I don't want to waste any more time, so how about we get straight into it?
I'm ready when you are. Shoot.
Okay, to start with, what's one misconception about ocean acidification that you wish more people understood?
A common misconception is that ocean acidification is the same as ocean pollution. I mean, well, pollution can worsen marine health as well. Acidification is primarily caused by excess carbon dioxide entering the atmosphere. It's invisible change in ocean chemistry, which is why it goes so unnoticed, despite having as serious or even worse consequences than normal pollution.
Okay. And are there any warning signs that coastal communities should be paying closer attention to before the impacts become more severe?
Yeah, quite a few actually. Declining shellfish harvest, coral reef degradation, changes in fish migration patterns, and lower catches generally are all very important indicators. Monitoring these changes allows communities to prepare earlier for them and governments to respond very accordingly and to be more prepared for the situation at hand.
Yes. If you could advise policymakers to take just one action to better support low-income fishing communities, what would it be?
Uh-huh. I'd I'd encourage them to invest in long-term resilience rather than just short-term solutions. Just bandaging up the solution won't work it out. You have to make sure that it's a long-term solution that works to improve it in the long term. That means supporting sustainable fisheries, funding education, and maybe even alternative livelihoods, ensuring communities have access to accurate environmental data so they can prepare for any changes that might come around even after these uh, safeguards put in place.
Okay, perfect. If every listener could do one thing about after hearing this podcast, what would you want it to be?
I'd encourage people not to think of this as a problem too big to influence. No problem is too big to influence. If we work together, we can always make a difference. Support policies that reduce carbon emissions, choose sustainably sourced seafood when possible, and pay more attention to the communities that are most affected by these changes. And more often than not, these are the lower income communities that rely completely on the ocean. Collective action starts with informed individuals, so acquiring that knowledge in the first place is what's going to get you there to build up. Even something as simple as staying informed and talking about the issue with others can help the public support that requires that will get the required action.
Most people think about dying coral reefs or disappearing shellfish when they hear ocean acidification, but are there effects that don't get talked about very much?
Absolutely. One of the biggest overlooked impacts is on tiny marine organisms called pteropods, some nickname butterflies, sea butterflies. They're only a few millimeters long, but they're a major food source for fish like salmon, which are a major food source for us. Their shells dissolve very, very quickly in acidic water, so even though people never eat pteropods directly, losing them can ripple through the entire food chain and eventually cause a very bad negative effect on commercial fisheries. How could something that tiny end up affecting low-income families? What do you think?
Think about it like removing foundation from a building. If fish populations shrink because their food disappears, fishing communities catch less fish. Large companies might survive by importing seafood or investing in new technology, but small scale fishers often can't. They usually have fewer financial reserves and depend on single fishing season to make most of their income. I've also heard ocean acidification can actually change seafood quality. Is that true?
Oh, it can, very much so. Researchers have found that acidic conditions may affect the growth rate, texture, and even nutritional values of some marine marine species. It's not just about having fewer fish. It could also mean seafood becomes less nutritious, or it could take longer to reach market size. This creates higher production costs, which are usually passed on to consumers. So at the end of the day, it's going to be us suffering. Here's something interesting. Could ocean acidification actually make inequality worse?
It definitely can. Wealthier fishing operations can often adapt by relocating using advanced monitoring equipment or switching to different species. Smaller family owned fisheries usually can't afford those changes. So the people contributing the least to carbon emission often end up facing the greatest economic risk. Does this only affect coastal communities?
No, no, not at all. Many inland communities work in seafood processing, transportation, packaging, or distribution. If fisheries decline, those jobs will disappear too. The economic effects are going to be spreading far beyond the coastline. It's going to ripple through the economy and, of course, at the end of the day, to the consumers. What do you think is one of the most surprising fact that people don't know?
Some scientists think ocean acidification could make it harder for certain fish to smell predators or find suitable habitats. Change in ocean chemistry may interfere with their senses, making them more vulnerable. It's fascinating because we are not just changing where marine animals live, we may actually be changing how they behave.
Oh wow, that's incredible. So in the end, ocean acidification is not only dissolving shells, it's quietly reshaping food webs, local economies, and even behavior of marine life in ways most people never even expected, and won't even notice until the consequences reach us.
And John, why would ocean acidification matter after a hurricane or tsunami?
Thing is, healthy coral reefs act like a natural breakwater, reducing wave energy before the storm even reaches the shore. Acidification weakens that coral growth, making them less effective over time. This means poorer communities may face greater flood damage and higher rebuilding costs. It changes who controls the food industry. Now, could
Oh,
ocean acidification actually change who owns the fishing industry?
I think yes, definitely yes. As fisheries become less predictable, large corporations are usually better equipped to absorb losses or relocate operations. Small independent fisheries often can't. Over time, this can concentrate seafood production in the hands of fewer companies, reducing opportunities for local families. And we usually hear about fishermen being losing income. But what about women?
Well, in my definition of low-income communities, I'd include women as well. But specifically women, in many low-income coastal communities, women work in processing, drying, selling, and marketing seafood. Even if they never go out on the water directly, smaller catches means lesser work and lower income for them too. These roles are often overlooked in discussions about climate change. So even if they're not directly mentioned, they're definitely 100% implied. Fish might move across borders. Is ocean acidification creating political problems too?
It can. Like as soon as ocean conditions change, some fish species shift where they live. They can that can spark disputes over fishing rights between neighboring countries. Small scale fisheries often lose access first because they can't travel further offshore. And I've also heard baby shellfish are especially vulnerable.
Oh yeah, they are. Oyster larvae only have a few hours to start building their shells after hatching. If the water is too acidic during that short window of time, most of them will not survive. This is why hatcheries now carefully monitor water chemistry almost minute by minute. What do you mean by twice?
Twice means rising sea levels may force people to relocate physically. At the same time, acidification can destroy the fisheries they depended on economically. Even if they stay in the same place, they may still lose their livelihoods. And how could ocean acidification impact healthcare?
Oh, that's a good question. Many marine organisms produce chemicals used in marine research, medical research, I'm sorry, including potential cancer treatments and antibiotics. If biodiversity declines because of acidification, we could lose species before scientists even discover what they could help us with. And why is it only about eating less seafood?
Not necessarily, I don't think so. In many coastal communities, fish are the main source of protein and omega 3 fatty acids. If seafood becomes expensive, families may replace it with cheaper, less nutritious food, leading to long term health impacts that aren't immediately obvious.
That brings us to an important question. How aware are people of this issue? Before recording this podcast, we conducted a survey. Uzair and I will talk through this, what we found.
Before recording this podcast, we conducted a survey with Microsoft Forms. It was to understand public awareness and their opinions about ocean acidification. So we asked 30 questions altogether, covering awareness, perceived impact, opinions and solutions, and even personal environmental behaviors. And we picked out the most important or the most significant questions that we thought are most relevant. And the results were surprising to say the least. First, awareness. A significant number of the respondents had heard the term ocean acidification, but when asked to explain what causes it or how it affects human communities, many were unsure. Most people associated it with plastic pollution rather than CO2 emissions, which tells us there's a major misunderstanding in knowledge.
What really stood out to me was how disconnected people were between the environmental science and the human cost. Most respondents had never connected ocean acidification to poverty or food insecurity. They thought of it as purely an environmental science topic. That gap is exactly the problem. Because when people don't see the human cost, they don't feel urgency. And without urgency, nothing changes for communities like Mekans.
Another interesting find was when we asked people who they think is most responsible for solving ocean acidification, and the majority of them said governments and large corporations. Very few actually said individuals. But when we asked if they would be willing to pay slightly more attention for sustainably sourced food, they said the majority said yes. So people are willing to act, but they just need better information and direction. They need to be given more knowledge on the topic so they know what to do and how to do it.
Yes, and perhaps the most encouraging result when asked how likely they were to share information about ocean acidification after taking our survey. The majority said likely or very likely. That tells us awareness campaigns can work. People care, they just need to be reached. Fortunately, ocean acidification is not an unsolvable problem, but let's discuss some practical solutions. Uzair and Milana, what can actually be done?
Our survey showed that many people are concerned about the health of our oceans, but concern alone isn't enough. Real change has to come from action, and there are several practical solutions that can help slow acidification and support the communities most affected by it. The most fundamental solution is reducing carbon emissions globally, but of course, this is easier said than done. This means transitioning away from fossil fuels, investing in renewable energy, holding large corporations accountable for their environmental impact without really addressing the root cause. Everything else is just managing the symptoms.
At the community level, we need to protect and restore marine ecosystems, particularly coral reefs and coastal wetlands, which act as nature buffers. Marine protected areas where fishing and industrial activity are restricted give ecosystems time to recover. But the solution our group focused on most is direct support for affected communities. Our proposed solution is a Coastal Support Hub, a mobile application and community platform that connects low-income fishing communities to government grants, emergency financial aid, skills training programs, ecotourism opportunities, and aquaculture resources. The idea is simple. If fish populations are declining and fishermen cannot survive on their catches alone, they need real alternatives and real financial support, not just environmental policies that take years to show results.
And in an effort to gather more perspective, we shared the solution with another group during our peer feedback session. The main criticism that we received was that it was too broad. So it pushed us to narrow down our focus to a specific, actionable platform rather than a general concept. The Coastal Support Hub, as a mobile app, makes the solution more tangible, accessible. It makes it so that the problem is clearly in sight. And in order to really address the problem and make sure the right requirements are met, we need to make sure the problem's met head on. Public awareness and education are also critical. People cannot care about what they don't understand, and our surveys prove that. Social media, schools, media campaigns, and community programs all have a role to play. As we wrap up our discussion today, let's bring everyone together. Everyone, let's do our closing remarks.
Ocean acidification is a real, measurable, and accelerating crisis. The science is clear. Our oceans are changing faster than at any point in recorded history, and marine ecosystems are paying the price.
The human cost is real too. Millions of people in low-income coastal communities are losing their livelihoods, their food security, and their way of life because of a problem they did not create.
Solutions exist. From cutting emissions to building support platforms for affected communities, we have the knowledge, tools, everything that is required to solve this problem. What we need now is awareness, the will, and the urgency to act.
Yes, and ocean acidification may be invisible to most of us. We don't see it, we don't feel it, and we don't hear it about it enough. But for millions of people around the world, it is a difference between survival and poverty. Understanding this problem in the first step, talking about it like we are doing today is a second. And thank you for listening, and we hope this conversation encourages you to learn more about the health of our oceans. Thank you.